everybody. How are you guys doing? I hope everyone's good. I really appreciate you guys showing up. And McKenna, I appreciate the invitation. Thank you so much. I hope that I make this interesting for you and sort of give you a little bit of inspiration and motivation to pursue a career in medicine because it's truly very fulfilling. And so the first thing that I wanted to do is kind of introduce a video that I've been working on. It basically is just sort of a background, so you get to know me, where I came from. It's a little bit of the story of my life. And I must say I'm like truly grateful to have had this opportunity because it's very rare when you can kind of go back and like look at all the things that you've done and you sort of amaze yourself. You know, it's one of those things that like you tend to forget. You look at the certificates on your wall and you can't believe that, you know, time has gone by so fast and all of a sudden you're here owning your own business and you know, you have your own practice and taking care of patients, and it's been fabulous. But I sort of wanted to start from the beginning because the main thing that I want you guys to take home from this is that, you know, if someone like me can make it, I think any one of you guys can. And it's so inspiring that you're actually taking time on a Friday to be here and to join me. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go over, I'll play the video for you. I'll kind of stop halfway and maybe leave it up for some questions. And then I'll go over the second half of the video, which actually talks about like things that you can do to sort of make yourself a more viable candidate for medical school and residency, fellowship, that kind of stuff. Okay. So let me do a little bit of, I'm not very tech savvy, but let me do a little bit of screen sharing here. Hold on one second. This guy. It's over here. Okay. Oh. Here we go. All right, you guys, enjoy. You're gonna watch a movie.
Dr. Rodriguez, is
Yes?
there sound during this part?
Oh, give me 1 second. Sorry?
Okay. Is there sound during this part?
There is sound. Give me 1 second.
Okay.
I made a little mistake here. Hold on 1 second.
Okay, no worries.
There was supposed to be sound. I got to just figure out how to share it. Sorry, guys. I thought I had it all figured out. And is it on this?
My mother was born in Quila,
There we
and
go.
my
Good now? We good?
Yes.
Yes,
Thank
we can
you.
hear it.
Okay. What is this?
San Juan de Dios in Guadalajara. My
Oh, hold on. You know what? Are you guys still able to see the video and do the audio?
No, ma'am, we're not able to see or hear the audio.
Oh my gosh. Okay, hold on one second.
It's stuck on the little, I think, files page that you have open.
Oh, I'm so sorry. Let me take a look.
No, you're fine.
No worries. Thank you, everybody. Just we'll figure
You
it
can
out.
let me know that you're not seeing it. I've been watching it all myself.
I could see it at the beginning. I think it just reverted back to the files page.
How about now? No?
My mother
We
was
can
born in
only hear
Pila,
it, but
and
we can't see it.
Oh. Shoot. What are you looking for? How about now? Okay, hold on one second.
Can you guys see the screen now?
Yes.
Yes, ma'am.
Yes.
You guys have audio?
Yes.
my mother was
Yes, yes.
Okay.
All right. Sorry, guys. Here we go.
No
born in
worries.
Pila, and my father was born in Amacueca, both rural towns in Jalisco, Mexico. My mother was one of 12 children, my father one of 16. My great-grandfather fought in the Mexican Revolution. I would like to believe that I inherited his fighting spirit. Both my parents were born to extreme poverty. My mother tells us stories of fearing the torrential rains because that meant that her cardboard sandals would wash away. My father worked the pitaya fields with my grandfather so that they could make a living from their fruit stand in the Mercado San Juan de Dios in Guadalajara. My mother started working as a maid for a German woman at the tender age of 7. I go by my middle name Elena, but my first name is Hilda. In Spanish, the H is silent. My name is Nordic German, and it means battle or German war maiden. My mother named me after a woman who helped change the course of her life. Both my parents married very young. My mother was 16 and my father was 21. They lost 3 children in Mexico because they had little to no access to health care. This tragedy motivated my father to seek a better life for his family. He braved the uncertainty of a life in the U.S. and immigrated not knowing the language, with only the clothes on his back and $5 to his name. Like most immigrants, he took whatever job anyone would give him, and he saved until he could send for my mother and my eldest sister, which was the only surviving sibling born in Mexico. Once my parents were reunited in the U.S., they had 5 more kids. I have 5 sisters and 1 brother. My mother worked as a seamstress in a sweatshop in downtown LA, sewing baby clothes. Her boss would let her bring big bags of clothes home so that she could tend to her children. She would get 25 cents for every completed dress. Our job was to sew while she cooked, so I guess that made us child laborers. I helped my mom do the math on all of her completed items and made sure that she always got paid what she was owed. Her boss must have hated this young kid because I would walk into his office with my mom and show him the discrepancies in her paycheck. I started doing the accounting for her coworkers as well and made sure that they got paid for their work. We lived in a cramped 1-bedroom apartment. What little we had in terms of materialistic things, my parents more than made up for with love and support. We lived in a neighborhood where everyone was poor, so we never knew a life outside of that reality. Both my parents were not allowed to go to school because they had to work in order to survive. Both of them taught themselves how to read and write, so you can imagine that they could not help us with our homework. In elementary school, I was lucky to have a teacher by the name of Mr. Chappelle. who inspired his students from this poor inner city school to compete against the most affluent schools in the greater Los Angeles area. This was when I witnessed firsthand the huge disparity in our educational and economic system. Our teacher, however, did not allow us to make excuses or sulk in self-pity. He opened our minds to the possibility that we were just as worthy, just as smart, and capable of conquering our greatest fears through education. We started winning these competitions, and our confidence was unshakable. This teacher marked a pivotal moment in my life. Mr. Chappelle subscribed to the Socratic method and would call us to the front of the classroom and spontaneously ask us to recite from memory a poem from Edgar Allan Poe or Rudyard Kipling. This meant that you had to be prepared at all times. He introduced us to Shakespeare, Leo Tolstoy, J.D. Salinger, Richard Wright, Nathaniel Hawthorne, and taught us calculus, geometry, and trigonometry, without letting us know that these are classes we would normally take in high school. He believed in us, and this was all I needed to realize that I could do anything regardless of my socioeconomic status. Because I lived in a poor, gang-infested neighborhood, this meant that I only qualified to go to a public school that would likely not prepare me for college. Our elementary school teacher convinced my parents to send me to a private school. I attended Bishop Connolly High School and was forced to work full-time to pay for my tuition since my parents could not afford it. I had 3 jobs that I would juggle: the ice cream shop, shoe store, and a movie theater. These were all in the same mall. I would rush to scoop ice cream immediately after school. Once the ice cream shop closed, I would work the concession stand at the movie theater and then weekends at the shoe shop. My boss at the movie theater would let me do my homework during downtime. I honestly don't know how I was able to manage that schedule, but looking back now, I know I did this because I knew that it would get me out of being a statistic. Most of my neighborhood friends were either affiliated with gangs, did drugs, got pregnant early, or would die very young from gang violence. I was terrified of becoming that. During my senior year, I got the crazy idea of applying to Cornell University. I honestly thought that Cornell was in New York City, and I was drawn by the idea of the Big Apple. Little did I know that Cornell was 4 hours away from the city, almost bordering Canada, with some of the harshest winters I have ever experienced in my life. I applied early decision thinking that there was no way I would get into an Ivy League school. I got my acceptance letter in December, and in March I got my acceptance letters to USC, UCLA, Berkeley, which was my top choice. You would think that I would be celebrating, but going to New York was never in my agenda. When you apply early decision, you sign a contract stating that you will attend that university if you get accepted. I was devastated. I had no idea how to break the news to my parents. No one in my family had ever gone to college, and no one was allowed to move out unless you were married or kicked out because of a pregnancy. Prior to leaving to Cornell, I had never boarded a plane in my life. I also had no clue what to expect once I landed. I was in culture shock. I was a city girl, and suddenly I was transported to farmlands, waterfalls, and gorges. I cried for days after arriving, and I called my parents to tell them that I had made a mistake and I wanted to come home. My mom told me that I was not allowed to come back home until I finished. She was very firm. She told me in Spanish, "Te fuiste de la casa, pues ahora te chingas y no regreses hasta que termines." It basically translates to, "You moved out of the house, now you're screwed, and you better not come back until you're done." Tough love, I know, but that was my mom back then. She knew that if she coddled me, I would give up. At Cornell, I stood out like a sore thumb. I was happy when I met other fellow Latino students, but was quickly slapped back to reality when I would find out the enormous amount of wealth that many of these students from Argentina, Peru, Chile, Colombia, Puerto Ricans from the island possessed. I was so naive, and I did not fit in. Our backgrounds were so different, and the more I tried to assimilate, the brighter my truths became. My roommates were from Ireland, Russia, Vietnam, and Peru. We all had one thing in common: we were poor as hell, and we found that collectively we could afford an apartment at the bottom of the hill. If you're from Cornell, you know what that meant. The bottom of the hill is akin to saying that you're the runt of the litter. No one in their right mind would live at the bottom of the hill, because this meant that climbing that hill in the winter every day would be a feat in endurance. The scenery was beautiful, but having snow for 5 to 6 months out of the year wears on your soul. The suicide rate at Cornell was very high, and my goal was not to become that statistic. So I stood in my comfort zone. I occupied myself with work and school. I landed a job at a neurobiology lab doing DNA sequencing to understand the neural circuit of the spiny lobster. I'm sure that at this point you are thinking, this girl is a total nerd. I'm not, I promise. This job was serendipity at its finest. I was working at a cafeteria, washing pots and pans. My hands were raw and pruned from the enormous amount of dishes I had to wash. One day I happened to run into a neurobiology lab during a snowstorm for warmth, and I was drawn to the white coats, the beakers, the goggles, and pipelles. I didn't know how I mustered the courage to walk into the lab and ask if they needed help, not realizing I was speaking to the professor himself. He must have seen the desperation in my eyes and took pity on my pathetic self. He said that his lab was for graduate students with NIH grants, but maybe he could find a project for me, and maybe, just maybe, I could apply for a grant also. This was another pivotal moment in my life. I got the grant. I became one of his hardest working students, working late hours doing DNA sequencing, extracting data that we had not been able to obtain before. I learned how to write papers. We published our research in the Journal of Neuroscience, and I was introduced to this whole new world behind the scenes of new and innovative discoveries. Needless to say, I was able to move to the top of the hill, and I brought my roommates with me. I graduated with a dual degree in microbiology and Spanish literature. I always knew I wanted to be a doctor, but when it came time for me to apply to medical school, the college counselor said that I was not cut out for the science. This crushed me. She judged me based on my grades and said that I was better suited for the arts. I was a B+, A- student in microbiology, and I had a 4.0 in Spanish. I was devastated, and I let this woman convince me that I would not make it. I took a year off determined to kick ass on my MCAT so that it would make up for my B+ average. I was so wrong. When I finally applied to medical school and got interviews at all of my top schools, I was asked why I didn't apply the year before. I told them the honest truth, and they just laughed and said, you would have been accepted right out of college. I tell you this because if there's anything that you take home today, is that no one should dictate what you can and cannot do with your life. I was lucky enough to be accepted to UCLA Medical School. This meant I could come back home. Medical school was no joke, but I built a strong network. My fellow classmates were so amazing, and we leaned on each other to get through the curriculum and the long hours. During my clinical rotations, I chose to spend 3 months in Mexico, very close to the mercado where my father and grandfather had their fruit stand. I would walk past the mercado on my way to the Hospital Civil Nuevo in Guadalajara, and I know that if my grandfather were alive, he would be so proud. In Mexico, if you're a warm body and you're a medical student, you get thrown into the lion's den. I was delivering babies, performing C-sections and hysterectomies without having my medical degree. It was the most exhilarating experience of my life, and I came back determined to be an OBGYN. Once I figured out my life's calling, the rest is history. I was accepted to an OBGYN residency program at Harbor UCLA. I did a fellowship at Stanford University for minimally invasive and robotic surgery. And then I dabbled in several jobs before I realized that what I wanted most in my life was to open my own practice, which is both the most amazing and terrifying choice. Amazing because I could design and dictate exactly how I want my patients to experience their healthcare with me, and terrifying because no one teaches you anything about how to run a business in medical school. My goal today is to help you get there. The first thing you have to do if you're even thinking about becoming a doctor is to take a long look in the mirror and ask yourself if you're ready to commit to lifelong learning. to self-sacrifice, to putting your life on hold for marriage and children, to long hours, to extreme criticism from harsh professors, to losing lives and being able to deal with that emotionally and giving 1,000% in pursuit of your passion. Never, ever become a doctor for money, prestige, or parental pressure. If this is your goal, you need to rethink your strategy, because you will either fail or succeed and be miserable. Be a doctor because you have a driving force that makes you want to help people. Be a doctor because healing someone gives you an incredible sense of self-worth and more satisfaction than any paycheck. Be a doctor because you will not hesitate when called upon to help in the most inopportune moments. A car crash, someone having a heart attack in flight, someone choking in a restaurant, someone drowning or delivering a baby in a car, a pandemic. Be a doctor because you can volunteer in third world countries and make a huge difference. Your services are needed everywhere, and no robot or computer can ever replace you.
Okay, so I wanted to stop right there. And kind of, so that's sort of my background. That is a little bit about myself and where I came from. So you kind of know, all the struggles that I went through. And the second part of the video is just introducing you to what you need to do in order to get into medical school, residency, and then fellowship. So I don't know if you guys have any questions right now at this point. I don't know, McKenna, if you want to open it up for questions.
Yeah, sure. If you guys have any questions, feel free to either turn on your mic and ask them, or you can put them in the chat, and either I can read them to you, Dr. Rodriguez, or you can just see. Thank you so much for sharing. Everybody absolutely loves it. It's completely inspiring.
Okay. Sorry for all the technical difficulties at the beginning. I can do a lot of things, but sometimes it's just, it's really hard for me to get it together. I rely on the younger millennials to do this for me. So thank God I had my friend here to help me out.
No worries. It happens to everybody. I would not have been able to do it either. So.
All right.
Hi, Dr. Rodriguez.
Yes.
I have a quick question. So I know you shared a lot about, how your background inspired, and soy mexicana también, así que muchas gracias.
All right.
But I do have a question about, once getting into the field, and like you spoke about participating in labs and all of that, how did being a woman and a Latina woman affect your ability to succeed in this field? Because I myself have experienced a lot of animosity, and I wonder how you overcame that.
Absolutely. I think it's just kind of like when you're a minority, you almost feel like you kind of have to constantly prove yourself. And the way that I overcame a lot of that, because I did, when I was in college, obviously, like I said, I stood out like a sore thumb. It was really hard for me to assimilate. And in fact, I kind of didn't want to assimilate. I realized that when I tried to do that, I actually ended up feeling worse about myself. And I think being true to yourself is sort of the best way that I've been able to handle all of that. Deep down inside, I know that when I get a lot of animosity or hatred, or, I know that the problem isn't me. I know that I feel sorry for that person. I think the problem is the other person. And so you just have to kind of ignore that stuff. Honestly, like, you develop really tough skin, and you just, I think that growing up so poor kind of taught me to be a fighter, and nothing was going to bring me down. My dad came here with nothing, and if he was able to sort of overcome all of those adversities, there's no way that me, who, came here, knows the language, has been granted all of these, the privilege to have an education, that I wasn't going to take advantage of that and then just ignore all of that stuff that's being thrown my way and just keep, you know, chugging along. I hope
Thank you so much.
If you have your hand raised, I think who had their hand raised first?
It was me.
Natalie?
It's okay. Yeah, it's a hard name. Muchas gracias, Doctora Rodriguez. I just had a quick question, especially for the few Latinos that are here now, as I was saying, the health disparities that still exist. So how is it, maybe you're going to talk more about that, but why did you choose OBGYN over other ones, especially saying that we have increased diabetes, obesity, mental stigmas? I mean, Black and Latinos are so affected. So really, where did you decide, like, this is where I'm going to make
This is
my
what I
impact?
wanted to do.
Yeah.
You know, honestly, I think in medical school, they really try to push a lot of people of color to do internal medicine, family medicine. And I'm not going to lie, they tried to push me, but I was always very drawn to surgery. I love that this specialty can incorporate both clinical work, so you see patients in the office, but then at the same time, I could be in the operating room doing what I love to do most. I was always drawn to surgery, and so I always knew that I didn't want to just strictly be a surgeon because I wanted to have that connection with my patients. And truthfully, you know, you can make a difference in any field. I mean, Latinos are needed everywhere. And so speaking the language, I've been able to connect still with a lot of my patients. I still see a lot of patients that have diabetes, high blood pressure, you know, mental health issues, that type of stuff. So even though I'm kind of subspecialized, you know, people come to you with their can of worms. You know, they don't just come to you with an ovarian cyst. You know, they have an ovarian cyst and they've been traumatized by a rape, or, you know, or they have, you know, really high blood pressure, or they've, you know, just lost a parent. So, you know, when you're a doctor, you sort of, I mean, some of the best doctors I know don't just focus on the illness. It's much more than that, you know. So you can do whatever you want to do is what I'm trying to say.
That's a great answer. Somebody else had their hand raised. Actually, if you want to ask it, then you can. So I'll let you go if you still have your question.
Hey, Dr. Rodriguez, thank you so much for sharing your story. I just, the question I had was, when you were thrown in the deep end in Mexico, did you feel like when you came back to Harbor UCLA, the hospital, did you feel like you had a leg up over the other residents?
Oh my God, yes. That experience in Mexico was amazing. I mean, not that I would encourage it. There's no way that somebody else from like another country could come here to the US and operate. In fact, they have so many restrictions. I actually was in shock that they let me, you know, the first day I got there, they're like, okay, go scrub in. And they, you know, I was fearless. They sort of let me operate. They let me do all this type of stuff. So and that's not very typical. You're not going to get that as a medical student. You can scrub in and you can hold retractors and do that kind of stuff, but you're not physically there, like delivering the baby or doing the C-section. So certainly when I started my residency program, I felt very, very comfortable doing all that stuff because of the experience. So, you know, don't feel like you just have to do clinical rotations here or volunteer here. If you guys have the opportunity, I always say venture out. You know, you need to look and see what other people are doing and look to see how so many get by with just so little. You know, we're so blessed here in the US to have the technology that we have. It isn't like that everywhere. And so if you can be successful in another country with like 3 sutures, you know, to get you through the entire surgery, you're going to do really well when you come back. Anyone else?
Carla had asked earlier, I don't know if you're going to go over it in the second part of the video. She asked, how did you finance medical school?
Oh, loans. So I was very lucky. I actually got a scholarship. So the one thing that I would definitely encourage you guys is there's a ton of scholarships out there. Don't feel like you have to do all of this with loans, although most people do. I applied for every scholarship that I could get a hold of. And thankfully, I got a really good scholarship, both to Cornell and to UCLA. But, you know, a big part of that, I also had to finance myself, like your books and your housing, that type of stuff. So I just got student loans. But truthfully, you know, the best investment that you're going to make is in yourself. So don't be afraid of those student loans, because once you're done, you're going to more than make up for it. You'll be able to pay those off.
Dr. Rodriguez,
Mhm.
Are there programs that you can work at particular hospitals afterwards to help with finances, or?
Yeah, very good question. So once you're done with residency, you have the option of doing like a loan forgiveness program. So some people will work in areas that are very underserved. And if you work there, I think they have like a minimum either 2 or 3 year requirement. They forgive your loans. So that's another option. You know, the military obviously will also do a loan forgiveness. So there's so many things that you can do that will help you finance your education. Great question.
I have another question, Dr. Rodriguez. Would you recommend working through medical school, or is that something that should maybe not be done if possible?
I would not recommend it. You're going to be completely consumed with your studies, as you should be. You know, I did not have time to work. So I wouldn't recommend it. But I did work when I was in residency. I used to moonlight at an airport urgent care to make some more money, and I also used to moonlight at Kaiser because they needed, you know,
Maggie, come.
help with the deliveries. Anyone else?
Yes.
Me again.
Oh, sorry. You could go ahead.
Okay. It was more on like a bit of a personal level, but I just attended a conference for Harvard Latinas, and a lot of the things that we discussed, we are all like in different specialties. We want to be lawyers, we want to be doctors, we want to be activists, whatever. And yet we all had like this sentiment of being the lonely Latina in whatever room that we sort of went into as undergrads. And so I'm wondering if you ever had any sort of experience of that and how mentally you got past that to really validate your presence being there. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, without a doubt, you know, the higher you go on the educational ladder, the lonelier and lonelier it gets. I can't wait for it to be a day when that's not the case. And thankfully, we're starting to see a lot more Latinos and African Americans in medicine, you know, lawyers, engineers, architects. But I've always kind of overcome that by trying not to be the outsider, trying not to see myself that way. I think when we sort of put ourselves in a box and just, you know, have that woe it's me mentality, I understand, you know, our struggles are very different and not very many people are going to understand what you're going through. They haven't lived your life. They don't know your background. But I think that you should see that as a strength rather than a weakness. The fact that you are in school, you're going to college, you're thinking about doing these great things already puts you at a whole other level. And I mean, there's nothing more rewarding for me than to see, you know, myself reflected in other other doctors, other specialties. We need more of us. And so don't feel alone. You know, you have so many resources out there for you, and don't let that stuff discourage you. Your presence will be known and people will respect you for being there, you know?
Hi, doctor. I have a question for you.
Yep.
Okay, so I'm actually not like a STEM major or anything like that. Like I'm not a chemistry or bio major. I'm actually an anthropology major, so I do biological anthropology instead. Um, would that also be good on like my background? You know,
Yes, absolutely. So one of the things that I was gonna go over in the second part of the video, and I promise not to make it that long, but you know, I was on the admissions committee for UCLA Medical School. And one of the things that always made people more interesting is when they did something other than science. Actually, that I found that some of the most interesting candidates, you know, did all kinds of other things. I did a microbiology major just because I thought that's what I had to do. But truthfully, you know, where I was happiest was Spanish literature and poetry. And we want more well-rounded people. All you need to do is just take the curriculum. So take the courses that are required by that, you know, that medical school. And then as long as you fulfill those, you can major in whatever you want, because there's no reason why you shouldn't do what you're really passionate about and what you love. That doesn't mean that because you like anthropology, you can't be a doctor.
I just have one more question. So I also work in a pharmacy right now. Like I have a license to be back there and anything. Would that benefit me in any way, shape, or form?
Yeah, definitely. I mean, it just depends on what you want to do. Listen, any experience, even if you worked at a shoe store, you have a story to tell. You know, a pharmacy, you've got a leg up if pharmacy is what you want to do eventually. You know, you'll get to, you know, even for medical school, knowing the names of the drugs, you're going to have a step up just by doing that. I definitely encourage all of you guys, if you're definitely interested in becoming a doctor, seek out other doctors, you know, seek out the things that you think you're interested in. Do some shadowing. I know right now it's really difficult because of the pandemic, but I am so happy having students come and work with me. I usually have them as my scribe. That gives me a reason to be able to bring them into the patient room, because oftentimes patients don't want students in there. But, you know, I introduce them as my scribe. And so you're helping me write my notes so I can get out of here earlier. And at the same time, you're listening and you're, you know, learning about all these different illnesses. And sometimes I'll call on you to come and help me with a biopsy or help me with a procedure. So that way you get an idea if you think that this is something that you really want to do.
Hi, Doctora Rodriguez. I had a quick question. So I'm currently a fourth year student at UCLA. I'm hoping to apply to med school this upcoming cycle. And like yourself, I'm interested in gynecology, and I really want to be part of the UCLA Harbor OBGYN residency program. So with that being said, how did you make yourself very competitive? Because I know OBGYN is one of the top residencies going into med school.
It is. You know, I mean, I think any residency program is going to be competitive, but the way you make yourself stand out is to just work really hard. You know, being in residency and working with medical students that would come and rotate with us, we knew the ones that were, you know, genuinely had their heart and soul, and really were interested in pursuing a career in OBGYNs, because they would stay up late at night. They would want to be there for that delivery. They would offer help without being asked. They weren't constantly looking at their watch, you know, waiting to get out of there. When I did my rotations at places that I knew I wanted to go, I was, you know, the most helpful person you would find, without being, obnoxious and trying to step on toes. That's just not me. I think that people can see your true character. And if you're likable and you're friendly and you show that this is what you really truly want to do, you're not going to have a problem getting into those types of programs. I did an extra rotation at Harbor UCLA because as a fourth year, you have an option to do that. And so I chose, the program that I really wanted to go to. And I wanted to go to Harbor because Harbor is, you don't really get your hand held very, very much. There are some residency programs where patients are very, they're very hesitant to let a resident do anything. So they just want the attending to do it all. At Harbor UCLA, it's underserved. It's a county hospital. Patients are so appreciative that you're there to help them. And so I did an extra rotation in my fourth year. I got to meet all of the residents. We became friends. And so when I applied, I was pretty confident that hopefully I would get in. There's still sort of that element of doubt, but you'll get a good sense of like where they really want you.
Thank you. I also had another quick question. So, being that you're an OBGYN, specifically gynecologist, I know in the Latino community, especially those that grew up in very like Roman Catholic households, it's very taboo to talk about periods or vaginal health. So have you ever had those cases where a cystic, a dermoid tumor or a cyst goes undiagnosed because it's always, kind of hushed, like, oh, it's just a period pain? Because that's something that I'm interested in kind of like touching on.
Yes, I have a lot of my little Latina ladies coming in here and, they're very hush hush about things, but I'm pretty vulgar sometimes, just to let you guys know, I sell vibrators in my office. I'm pretty open and honest and upfront about everything. And I think if you take away that taboo and let them know it's okay to talk about it, they really start to develop a level of trust with you where they feel they can. Sometimes I have to shut them up. I'm like, you are telling me way too much things that I don't want to know. But that's the nice thing about being a doctor is you're almost like a priest. They can confess things to you, and especially if they can relate to you on a whole other level, where you look like them, you talk like them, you speak the language, you understand, you grew up with those, that Catholic guilt, and you can't talk about like tampons because you're going to lose your virginity. So all of those things were things that I had to deal with, but it's been really nice sort of, paving the road for them and letting them know that it's okay to take care of their health. It's okay for them to enjoy an orgasm and be selfish and have it be about them, because that's very common in our community. And so having a doctor that looks like them, talks like them, and understands, sort of the culture, I think you're going to be a very valuable asset.
Thank you.
All right, you guys, I don't want to keep you very long because it's a Friday and you guys are all like, college kids and high school students, and you should be partying, not hanging out with me. So I'm going to finish the video, and then at the end, I'll leave it open for a couple more questions, okay? All right, let's get started.
So now that you've decided that you want to pursue this career, congratulations, you've picked one of the most noble professions I know. But how do you get here? Here are some words of advice. Number 1, do not ever slack off. Kick butt in high school so that you get into a reputable university. Number 2, you will need a bachelor's degree, so you have to go to college. This is typically 4 years. In college, major in something that you love, but you must complete the medical school requirements, which typically are 1 year of biology, 1 year of chemistry, 1 year of physics, math, either statistics or calculus, English, biochem, psychology, and sociology.
I heard you can't see the video. Give me 1 second.
I can see it. I think whoever said they can't see it, if you go and change the view to standard view, it will pop back up for you.
Oh, so you can see it.
Yeah.
Yes, ma'am. The rest
Okay,
of us
sorry
can see
about
it.
that. Here we go.
Each medical school has their own requirements, so you should definitely take a look and see what they want from you. You will also have to take your MCAT and do well in all your courses. Number 3, you then apply to medical school, and this is another 4 years of your life. If you want to practice in the US, going to a US medical school is your best option. You can go to allopathic medical school, which is where you get your medical degree or MD, or you can go to osteopathic where you get your DO. Sometimes students apply to medical school in the Caribbean or abroad because getting into med school in the US is hard as hell. Regardless of where you go to medical school, if you want to practice in the US, you have to complete a US residency program. In med school, you take an exam called Step 1 and you complete clerkships in all specialties. Be sure to shine in those clerkships that you are strongly considering for your life career. Number 4, in medical school, you will apply to a residency program, which can be another 3 to 7 years. Getting into residency is governed by the match, which is the National Resident Matching Program, which means that you rank the programs that you like and have been offered an interview, and then they rank you. This is placed into an algorithm, and on match day, you get an envelope telling you where you will be doing your residency. Residency is a test of endurance. It doesn't focus so much on test taking, but on lives of people that are now in your care. The hours are long and irregular, and the pressure can sometimes be very intense, but the rewards are extremely gratifying because you're a doctor now, and everything you have learned so far, you're finally putting into practice. Once you're done with residency, you can either start working in private practice or work for a hospital, or you can choose to apply to a fellowship program. Fellowship programs are meant to immerse you in a subspecialty. For example, an OBGYN can apply for fellowship in urogynecology, perinatology, reproductive endocrinology, oncology, or minimally invasive or robotic surgery. Similarly, orthopedic surgeons, for example, can complete fellowships in sports injuries, spine, hand, pediatrics, trauma, hip or knee replacements. General surgeons have fellowships in vascular, colorectal, breast, cardiac, transplants, pediatrics. These fellowships can be another 1 to 5 years, but they really help you to stand out compared to another physician who's never completed fellowship training. So what does this all mean? Well, it means that by the time you're done with your training, you will either be anywhere from 29 to 40 years of age. In other countries, most students complete 4 years of high school and then 6 years of medical school track. They basically skip college altogether. I was lucky enough to be on the admissions committee for UCLA Medical School. When I interviewed candidates for medical school, the universal answer for why they wanted to be doctors was to help people. But so do nurses, pharmacists, massage therapists, social workers, so your reasons need to be a little bit more profound. As a doctor, you are the leader of the healthcare team, and the accountability falls on you. You cannot make mistakes like a plumber or a mechanic without there being dire consequences sometimes. Sometimes these mistakes are out of your hands, but regardless, it weighs on your soul. So you have to have that fighting spirit in you if you want to succeed as a doctor. It has been 16 years since I graduated from my residency program, 8 years since I opened my own practice, and not a single day goes by where I don't wake up feeling fulfilled. I honestly don't feel like I'm coming to work. When you do what you love, it isn't work, it's much more than that. I have 14 employees and 15,000 active patients. I stopped delivering babies 3 years ago, and now my practice is gynecology focused, with a strong emphasis on surgery and optimizing health through hormone replacement therapy. Surgery, however, is my true passion. I could live in the operating room. I have tackled some of the toughest cases with an enormous sense of satisfaction, and I'm also grateful to have the insight to know when a case is beyond my abilities. I have no problems letting go of that ego if it means that collaborating with my amazing colleagues will give my patients the best possible outcome. My side projects are providing useful information for patients via Instagram, YouTube, and through my podcast, Virginius. Yes, I know, the name is very clever. I still make time for my creative side. Many of you may not know this, but I make jewelry. That's my little side hustle, and it's my way of decompressing. I love to travel, and I love exercising. I have patients that come from all over the world, Europe and South America. I built my practice from scratch with my own money and a strong resolve. My dream is to eventually open a women's wellness center. I don't know when that's going to happen, but one thing that I've learned is that you never stop yearning for bigger and greater things. Being a trailblazer is the mentality I hope to inspire in you. Challenge yourself and don't be afraid of failures. They build character.
All right, you guys. That's it. I hope you enjoyed it. I don't know if you maybe have more questions. I'd be happy to answer them.
Yes, hi. I have a question. First of all, I want to thank you so much for taking the time to be here, and your story is just amazing and so inspiring. But I have a couple of questions. So first, on motivation, how do you stay motivated after the hard days, and also how do you keep that work-life balance?
You know, honestly, I think that when you do what you love, it doesn't feel like work. And so every morning when I wake up, I come in with this renewed sense of energy. I don't know if I'm an anomaly, but I love, my friend is saying that I am an anomaly. I love coming into work. It doesn't feel like work. When I'm here and I'm helping people, you know, making a difference in their life is so motivating for me. I think making sure that you take time for yourself also. I love exercising. I love traveling. Like I put in the video, you know, I love making jewelry. That's my way of taking care of my own sanity and my mental health. But again, if you're going to go into medicine because this is truly your passion, you're going to be motivated every day. And you'll find ways to balance things out. You know, back in the day, especially in residency, you know, the curriculum was pretty tough and the hours were very long. And it's not to say that it isn't that way now, but there's a lot of things that protect you now where, you know, you only have to work a certain amount of hours. So I think residents now just have a little bit more time to decompress and take care of themselves.
Did you ever feel like giving up during medical school?
All the time. I felt like giving up the moment I arrived in college. If you don't feel like giving up, you're doing something wrong. You know, you got to constantly challenge yourself. That's the whole beauty of life, is that, you know, you're going to have those days where you just feel like you just want to let it all go. I mean, opening up my practice, there's so many heartaches, so many things that you learn along the way where you're just like, oh my God, I'd rather just work at McDonald's and not have to deal with the pains of, you know, running a business and making sure that all of my employees get paid. Same thing in residency, you know, it's brutal. You stay up late hours, you lose patients. You know, a lot of times it's completely out of your control, but yet you blame yourself. You always keep questioning, was there something that you could have done different? But I think that those challenges are what make you a stronger, better person. You know, it'd be horrible if everything in life was easy, right? You wouldn't be motivated to do anything.
Yeah, because right now I'm doing my basics barely. I just graduated high school in 2020, and I tell my mom all the time that I just tell her, like, I don't think I'm gonna make it to medical school. I just want to quit. It's just, especially right now during COVID, I can't go to school, you know?
Yeah. You just gotta, you know, dig deep and look at yourself in the future. Where do you see yourself? And that should be your motivation. You just got to keep shooting for that, because you can convince yourself that you're not worthy. And believe me, you will give up if you do that. But you got to see yourself, you know, 10, 15 years from now, and just shoot for that. You know, I don't know that I'll ever be able to open my wellness center. I've been talking about it enough. I'm sure my friends are sick of it, but you know, that's what I'm shooting for, and I'll keep working towards that until hopefully I accomplish it.
Hello, Dr. Rodriguez. Thank you so much for this presentation. It was really inspiring. So I'm a PA. So I'm on the pre-PA track, and I'm actually not like looking to be a doctor, but I was just wondering if you've ever worked with any OBGYN PAs and how that experience was.
Absolutely. Oh my God. Some of my favorite colleagues are honestly my nurse practitioners, who I adore. I think they're on this meeting and they're so supportive. They do everything that I do with the exception of surgery. They do biopsies, they do ultrasounds, they, you know, they take care of patients. They, you know, come to me for advice, but they're pretty much on their own. I have patients that will only see my nurse practitioner. And I love that, you know, that's what I want. That's the type of care that I want to provide for patients, where they don't see, oh, I only need to see the doctor. No, my PAs, my nurse practitioners, they're just as smart, just as qualified, and we're a team. So good for you that you are going to PA school. You know, some of the people that I most admire are PAs.
Thank you so much. I also had a second question. So how do you prevent burnout from your, like, throughout your academic career?
Ooh, that's a good question. Again, I feel like sometimes I'm an anomaly, but you know, to go into medicine, sometimes you have to be a little crazy. I think you have to have that motivation to just kind of keep chugging along. But to prevent that, you know, you got to never lose focus of the things that you love. You know, there are obviously things that traveling, going on a run, you know, if you feel like it's very overwhelming, reaching out to friends, like those are all the things that you have to keep doing every day. So for me, you know, that's what I do. I love to work. I'm always getting in trouble at home because I don't come home on time. And I'm working on videos like this. I mean, I was in my office till 11 o'clock at night last night, but I'm just, you know, those are things that I love to do. So again, it doesn't feel like work, but you just have to, you know, pay attention to yourself, realize when you're struggling and you need a little breather and a timeout, and do the things that will help you sort of decompress.
Thank you.
Hi, Dr. Rodriguez. Thank you so much for your presentation and especially your video. I'm also from California, and I moved to go to Cornell undergrad, and I'm currently a senior.
Nice!
Go Big Red. But I know in your video you kind of talked about how you met with an advisor and they said, you know, I don't think medicine is for you, your GPA, or, you know, those kind of things. And I met with an advisor, different advisors, but, you know, some are kind of very blunt and trying to say, you know, you're not cut out for medicine. And I it's really heartbreaking to hear that from someone. And I know I want to go into medicine. I was wondering how you coped with that.
Oh my God. I think that's the first and only time that I ever let anybody tell me that I couldn't do it. And I'm so mad at myself that I believe that person. Cornell is brutal. I think that they need to, I'm sad actually to hear that this is still going on. I'm an old lady, you guys. So I thought that that was just something from the 1920s. I'm kidding. I graduated earlier than that. But it makes me really sad to hear that that's still happening. You know, yes, the advisor should give you a realistic, you know, expectation of like, you know, of where you should apply and that type of stuff. But I don't think that they should ever discourage you from something that you're truly passionate about. So what if you're a B+ student, you know, if you have that drive, I can tell you that some of the best doctors that I know didn't necessarily reflect it on a grade. You can have 4.0 students that suck at people skills. I mean, that they're horrible and they'll never make it. Patients just aren't drawn to that. They want someone who they can relate to and who they can talk to. So don't just focus on the grades. Yes, you have to work hard and you gotta, you know, make an effort. I'm not saying get F's in college and then expect to get in. No, you have to work hard, but certainly don't let anybody else tell you what you can and cannot do.
Thank you so much for that.
Is it my turn now?
Yes.
Hi, I'm a high schooler. Before I go into what I'll say, I just want to thank you for sharing your story. It was very inspiring.
Aww.
So, my parents are immigrants, and I was born in a refugee camp, but was raised here. So, and ever since I was 5, I wanted to become a doctor. I'm a high schooler now, like I said. I worry a lot about my grades, and I'm scared that I won't even make it into college or even medical school, but I do very well. My GPA is an average of a 98 to a 99 every quarter, but I'm just worried that like I won't make it, and I'm scared of finances because like I'll be the first to go to college and I'm the youngest too. So it's just very challenging, and I just don't know if I'll make it, how to handle it.
Well, first of all, the fact that you're in high school and you're on this webinar is pretty impressive already. You have a beautiful story to tell. You're a refugee. You've gone through a lot, you know, so there's a lot of your fears, I think, stem from that. And if you've got a 98 to a 99 average, you're going to make it. You know, and you need to have fun along the way too. Don't be so hard on yourself. High school, yes, it's important because obviously you want to get to a good university. But from what you're telling me, it sounds like you're already well on your way. So just, you know, enjoy yourself. And this is the time when you should be having fun and not take yourself so seriously. Once you get into college, you know, that's a little bit of a different story, but you're going to do just fine.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Really quickly, just since a couple of people have asked about it, I am going to send the Google form in the chat where you just put your name and your email and how you heard about ISPR, and then that's how we'll send you our certificate to get your shadowing hours for today. So if Dr. Rodriguez, you want to answer a few more questions while I send that out. And I know, speaking of the last high school question, somebody asked if I would ask you. They had not the best grades in high school, and they were wondering if that had any significant setbacks when they're trying to be a doctor, or if that had any issues later on.
I think high school is sort of the least of your worries. I think getting into college, you know, you always have the opportunity to turn your life around. Certainly the bad habits, if you had some bad habits in high school, like don't bring those to college. College, I think, is when it's going to really start to matter because, you know, there's a lot that you can do that will make you stand out as a candidate, but you also have to bring in the grades to get into a reputable medical school. So I wouldn't worry so much about high school, but obviously making sure that once you get to college, you do much better. All right, you guys, I think we're good. Yeah. Oh yeah, I wanted to, so, I wanted to get through like some surgery videos with you guys, but in the interest of time, I'm just going to direct you. I have a YouTube channel. So for those of you guys that are interested in learning more about female health and looking at stuff, the YouTube channel is under my name, Dr. Elena Rodriguez. And as you can see here, you can kind of scroll down, learn about fibroid surgery. I did a video on that displaced IUD that you guys saw earlier. I kind of go over a lot of like female issues that are pretty interesting. Some of these are a little, I don't know, I guess it's too much information if you're a high schooler and you don't want to look at a vagina or something like that, so just don't click on it. But some of this other stuff is pretty interesting. I also have a podcast that I kind of referred to earlier. Let me see if I can find it here. So this is my podcast. You can access it through this link, Buzzsprout. But you can also find it on Spotify if you just type in Vagenius. And I just kind of talk about like different issues, COVID-19, HPV, what does that mean? Just pick like different topics that I think would be interesting for you to know about. And then lastly, let's see, is my Instagram account. I post a lot of stuff on my Instagram account, usually on my storyline. If I have an interesting surgery case, I'll post it on the storyline and you guys can kind of take a quick look right then and there. I also do these, short videos on different topics, and we'll let you know, like if I have a new podcast episode. So you guys are welcome to kind of look through that as well. It's a lot of fun, and I try to make it really simple and language that is very easy to understand.
All right. I am going to send the link to the Google form one more time, and make sure if you guys want a certificate for the hours that you just go and fill that out. It's super easy. Dr. Rodriguez, thank you so much for joining us today. We absolutely loved hearing from you.
Oh my gosh, thank you so much for inviting me. I'm so glad that you guys have this platform, and good luck to all of you. Feel free to reach out to me. If I know right now during COVID it's difficult, but if any of you guys are in the area, want to learn a little bit more about gynecology, I have a ton of colleagues. Maybe you don't want to be a gynecologist. Maybe you want to learn about, general surgery or orthopedics or whatever topic it is that you're interested in. I had a lot of people along the way that helped me out. And I'm always so happy to, motivate and help you guys out and link you to some colleagues that would be a good source for you if you're in this area.
All right. That is awesome. So everybody be sure to go subscribe and follow Dr. Rodriguez, and make sure to follow the ISPR Instagram and subscribe to our YouTube to make sure you guys get all of the notifications for all of our upcoming webinars and events. And just thank you all so much for joining us today. And thank you again, Dr. Rodriguez. So if you guys...
Thank you. Thank you, McKenna. Bye, guys.
Yeah, bye.
Thank you, Doctor.